2 weeks ago, Kumar and I discussed the 11th and 12th volumes of Kentaro Miura's Berserk. It left us at a cliffhanger, as the eclipse has arrived and the Band of the Hawk is to be sacrificed so that Griffith can join the Godhand. So this week we're right back at it with volumes 13 and 14. We just couldn't wait. And there are good points to these volumes, but the wrap-up of the eclipse gets pretty off-putting. Why? Well, let me put it this way. I rarely feel moved to give a trigger warning, but I think I'd better warn listeners that there'll be a lot of discussion of rape in the first half of this episode. Besides that, the story finally answers the other questions raised in the first 2.5 volumes, and we at last come out of the extended flashback. As always, a reminder that you can support the podcast by pledging a few bucks a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. Or if you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. This is Tim.
And this is Kumar.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Kumar in Melbourne. Hello.
Hello.
We're right back with Berserk 2 weeks after our previous Berserk episode because we left it at a really exciting place, I guess.
Yeah.
That might be an understatement, but...
it was a cliffhanger.
Yeah, the climax of the whole flashback.
Yeah. I have thoughts about these 2 volumes.
Oh, yeah.
And the way it wrapped up. And maybe 2 weeks was not enough time. Maybe we should have left it a bit longer. Maybe my feelings would be more positive. Spoiler. About the things that happen in this volume.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think particularly a certain event that I'm sure you're talking about, there's the idea of it and there's how it's portrayed.
Well, yeah. I definitely felt like if I was just reading this series, if I wasn't reading it for the podcast, I think this is probably about the point that I would hop off. I think, the flashback ends. Mm-hmm. And I'm jumping way ahead, but I mean, then we get to the next storyline, which is set back in the present, and it's just like an adventure. It's just like another Batman story.
Yeah.
Like doesn't seem, it's like it's going to be this until volume 41. I'm not sure, but I definitely was not happy with the way things ended in the flashback or the way they were depicted. And then I wasn't happy with the stuff that was happening in the present, which just seemed like an adventure, as I said.
Not advancing the overall story.
And I mean, this is a bit of a peek behind the curtain, but usually on this podcast, somebody has heard about a book that they're interested in, or they've read a book that they liked, and then they approach someone else on the show to co-host an episode about it. We don't normally just barrel through and get to a point where I don't really like this or what, you know what I mean? And just keep going with it. I mean, there's so many series that we have done 1 or 2 volumes of that were great, and then we didn't continue them.
Yeah, and I'd kind of like to read
situation.
them. I'd kind of like to read the next volumes of those, like Cromartie High School or something. That was a long time
or even,
ago.
We never, even something like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run, which we only did a few volumes of. All sorts of, Cromartie High School, all that kind of stuff would be, that we just like, well, this is great, and let's move on to the next thing. And there's so many great indie comics, art comics that we haven't talked about because we've been talking about Berserk so much.
Well, and maybe after this one we could pause it a bit and do some other stuff.
I don't know. I think maybe the problem is just coming in like after 2 weeks or something. I don't know. I had a bit of, if you can tell, I had a little bit of a negative reaction this time. More than usual. Usually I find a kind of balance. There's stuff that really thrills me about Berserk. And then there's the stuff that is annoying or baffling. But this time the scales were weighed a bit more on the negative side. But, I don't know, maybe my feelings will change through the conversation, or 5 months from now, I might be like, hey, we gotta talk about Berserk again.
So last time when I said that what we were reading was upsetting, I'm not sure I was completely clear about what I meant. I mean, part of it was, yes, like the death and dismemberment, but also it's, kind of in 12 and into 13 here, we're doing 13 and 14 this time. Just the idea that these characters that we've really gotten to know in the Band of the Hawks were now all being murdered. And not only that, but their leader has approved of their murders, and it's for his own selfish ends that he's having it done. That was really disturbing.
Yeah, but it does explain Guts' bitterness.
Oh, yeah.
From volumes 1 to 3. Yeah, I mean, we do have to have a real betrayal, I think. So, that was upsetting for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I was surprised. I mean, I'm sorry to jump all over the place. I was surprised that Casca survived. I thought for sure she would be dead.
Yeah,
me too.
Me too.
I thought her death would be I thought everybody would be dead, including Casca, and that would be the thing that really set Guts off on this kind of angry rampage in the future. I was very surprised to find that she's still alive, like living in a cave, at the end of it. But we'll get around to that.
Yeah. We're starting volume 13. We're somewhere in here we were reminded that this boy who had just arrived on the scene is named Rickard. I'd forgotten his name before.
By the way, Casca is naked on the front cover.
Yes, that's right.
Let's point that out as an indication of the contents to follow.
Another surprise here at the beginning of 13 was that Zod and the skeleton on horseback are enemies. That I had not expected that either.
No. And the skeleton knight says, or Zod says of the skeleton knight, "You have been our foe for a millennium," or something like that. And then the skeleton knight says, "You were given the command to guard the gate, immortal one." These are in the opening pages. And I'm trying to remember we were kind of working on the assumption that the skeleton knight was that king that had overtaxed his people. We don't know that that's the case. We were just like, maybe. And the 4 angels were the 4 members of the Godhand. I don't remember what the relationship between the king and the angels was, so maybe that's not correct. It was incorrect to assume that. I don't remember what the details were exactly, but maybe it will be unpacked in a future volume.
But the two of them commence their own battle here.
Yes, but how does this battle proceed? Because later on, the skeleton knight shows up inside the battle in the vortex. So did he just walk away from this fight?
Well, he seems to have said, like, hang on, hold that thought. I got to go do something else. I'll be back.
I guess. I don't think we see it happen. We don't see him leave this battle, do we? I think he just starts to fight Zod, and then the next time we see him, he's somewhere else, and then he comes back to Zod. Unless I'm mixing some kind of flashback up.
I think you're right. It's just, he's kind of in 2 places at once or something. So the other Hawks are prioritizing saving Casca because she's their leader.
Sorry, I just want to talk about Zod. I want to talk about Zod and the Skeleton Knight again. Or Knight of Skeleton, as he was called in the previous volume. "You were given the command to guard the gate, immortal one," says Skeleton Knight. Zod says, "Hardly. I have no interest in their indulgent spree. What I seek are the strong. You should know that, old rival." I don't know what any of this means. Does he mean I have no interest? Does that mean Zod is not interested in what the other demons eating the sacrifices?
Yeah, I think that's the indulgent spree is, the other demons eating the Hawks.
So he's not guarding whatever gate he's supposed to be guarding. He's out here, and he wants to fight immortal Skeleton Knight because Skeleton Knight is the strong? I don't know.
I guess.
I don't know. But then the Skeleton Knight implies that this was all part of fate as destiny, causality. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Go on. I just wanted to point out we don't know. This is another passage where it's very unclear to me what was happening.
Yeah. So we see the end of Corcus as he's killed by a demon that's taken the form of a naked woman. I don't ever think I've ever seen a massacre that had so many boobs in it. Boobs everywhere.
I did like this sequence though because he thinks he's coming up to this beautiful woman. Is this Carcass or Gaston?
That was Corcus, I think.
Okay, but anyway, he sees a beautiful woman. Then when he buries himself in his face in her breasts, it turns into this big, looks like H.R. Giger's xenomorph. I actually like that sequence. It was pretty cool. Yeah, the sudden, because it's just a flash cut. Like you get a panel of him holding the woman, and the next panel, it's 2 panels on one page, and then you just go down and you just see it's just this giant monster. There's no transformation. It's just a jump cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Judo evacuates Casca. He grabs her at about. He's like, "We have to save the Band of the Hawk. You're the leader. You have to survive."
And they're riding off on his horse. And I thought this was genius. This flat demon slides in under them and eats their horse.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really... The monster designs were really cool at this stage. Yeah, I really did dig that weird flat monster that then turns into a big, I don't know, Martian. What am I saying? It doesn't look like a Martian. That descriptor makes no sense to anyone.
I think I kind of had that thought too.
It's some kind of weird alien being.
Yeah.
I can't even quite describe it. It's a really interesting... It's not like the other kind of gross, lumpy, organic monster designs here. It's this weird, just black, symmetrical shape with like 2 tongues coming out of it, like that are more like tentacles or tendrils or antenna of some sort. I'm not doing it justice. It's an interesting design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. There's something familiar about it. I feel like it reminds me of some...
That's true of everything in Berserk.
That's true. Like something from some UFO movie or that I might have seen a still of. I don't know.
Yeah.
So eventually Judo bleeds to death.
Yes,
and
he's
then
stabbed by the thing. Yeah.
The other demons come in and grab Casca and, of course, tear her clothes off.
Yeah, and they say... what's the line here? They start saying a sacrifice, a woman, a sacrifice, eat now, before that, they start saying. So they are keen to rip off her clothes and rape her. I don't know, Tim, I've never wanted to have sex with an octopus. I'm not sure that an octopus would want to have sex with a human woman. So I'm not sure why these demonic creatures are so keen on raping Casca. It didn't make sense to me. It was tentacle rape stupidity. And I have to say, and it's getting worse and worse in this volume, Casca used to be a really interesting character that was this warrior woman, and she has become a rape doll subsequently. And it gets tedious. We had this last volume where the monster had to rip her clothes off in that convenient way so that her butt was always showing, but her pubes were covered. And here we go again. Why do these things want to rape her? It's really dumb, and it just goes on, and it's pointless. And again, it seems to drive Guts berserk. Anytime Casca is attacked, violated, he goes really crazy. And it happened in volume 11 as well, or 12 or whatever it was.
11, yeah. Wild.
With Wild, yeah.
Yeah. Griffith is still metamorphizing. He feels like he's sinking away from the light.
Great visual of him like growing in this kind of embryonic state with these kind of like veins forming around. And the wings, you can see the actual physical wings are growing. And like his head is forming the actual vulture shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thinks, all their deaths are piercing through me. I wished for it. I killed them. It's strange. I don't feel anything. So, I mean, this metamorphosis is making him like 100% evil, as I understand it. And you see like this crystallization of the last tear he shed, which I guess was representing his frozen heart.
Yeah, what's the line? A heart is frozen. I'm trying to find it now. Yeah, it's weird. The metaphor kind of bounces back and forth. a heart. He says, "What's this?" And then the voice in the darkness says, "The crystallization of your last tear shed. When suffering so profound as to make someone rip himself apart is confronted, a heart is frozen." So again, we're jumping. Is it a crystallized tear or is it a frozen heart? It's kind of, I guess, both.
Well, I think his heart is, not the physical heart, but the emotional heart is frozen, and so his last tear is now frozen. I guess that's just kind of symbolic of it.
Yeah.
And then he sees all these like behelits raining down.
Droplets of ideas. The voice says they are splashes. Droplets of ideas that have spilled from this sea to eternity, summons to the other world. Now, again, what is this world? What is the other world? Does this world mean Earth, or does this world mean the place inside the vortex? From this sea to eternity, does this sea mean life on Earth? Normal mortal life? Hard to really figure out what's happening here.
Yeah. Well, anytime it gets highfalutin, it gets harder to understand.
Yes. And he meets something which he thinks is a god, or God. His question mark is God when he sees this thing forming in the darkness.
Yeah, which looks vaguely like the underside of an elephant.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't get any more of that in these volumes, so we don't really know what he's seeing there.
Yeah.
I suppose I feel like these two volumes, there are a lot of threads being pulled out that are going to be resumed later on.
Yeah.
After we get past just another adventure at the end of 14.
Yeah.
So Guts has been fighting all this time, like on the hill for the altar that was raised up, but then he falls off of it and lands in a lake of blood, and he realizes what's been happening down below.
Yeah, he does they do the drag, that thing where he stabs the faces and he drags down again. Mm-hmm. Thought it was a little bit repetitive to have it was cool the first time, but to do it again just seemed a bit weird. But anyway, yes. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. He finds Gaston alive, but in rough shape. And so Gaston says, everything about Boss Griffith as a person was just too different from us, just like he was someone out of a legend. Heh, and we got pulled into the middle of some crazy story someone wrote. Looks like I'm just a minor character. So he's got comics awareness here. And then his face explodes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Why? I guess something attacked him from behind that caused his face to explode. Yeah. Oh, no, from inside him. Because this thing emerges out of his neck. Yeah.
And Guts finds Pippin's body, but it's been all hollowed out from the back.
Yes.
And so this whole thread, there are a lot of pages that are just kind of aspect to aspect, just showing us all the different demons and what's happening. And it's not really advancing the story. It's just building the feel of it, the atmosphere.
Yeah. But then Guts sees Casca being held aloft by tentacles. Mm-hmm. There's a really tasteless panel of like a shot between her legs and all the blood pouring out.
Taste is out the window in this scene. Just let that be understood up front.
We knew what happened. I didn't need to see this crotch shot of this blood pouring out of her groin. It was rough. But again, this really sets him off again. You turn the page when you see that blood, and then you see the next page. It's kind of expressionistic drawing of like Guts with all these speed lines like over him as he goes absolutely berserk. And then like there's a double page splash that's also like just all speed lines of him slashing these demons. And it just goes on for several pages of him really losing it.
So Griffith is hatching, now known as the Wings of Darkness, Femto.
Yeah.
And Miura finally introduces all the Godhand member names.
Yeah. Now, if you remember back in Volume 1, I thought it was so ridiculous that the name of Griffith was Griffith, even though he was some kind of interdimensional demonic entity. And I thought, why is this character's name stupidly Griffith? But then we kind of got the backstory, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. One of these guys, so Griffith becomes renamed Femto, much like Anakin becomes Darth Vader, which is something I brought up on the show before. But there's one of these guys, it's called Conrad. Just Conrad.
Yeah.
We've got Void, Slon, Ubik, Femto, and Conrad. Why didn't this guy get a new name when he got turned?
Yeah, why is his name so kind of normal?
Yeah.
Conrad. I don't know. I guess Miura thought it was interesting, but I don't know.
By the way, also during the when Casca is being held by these tentacles, we have to see this like needle-like appendage start to go up her groin as well. That's a bit of a callback maybe to Evil Dead with the tree that rapes a woman. But again, we know what's happening to her. Like we don't need to keep showing it and have drawings of her perfectly shaped butt in the panel every time as well. Yeah.
And so Guts is watching, and his arm is in this demon's mouth.
Yes.
And he sees Griffith, and he seems kind of baffled. Like, what is this? What happened to Griffith?
Yeah. He's hatching like a little baby bird, like he's covered in like birth gore, like blood all over him. There's a really interesting panel where you see the kind of vulture mask, the hawk mask, but there's no face inside it. It looks like it's on page 118, I'm going to say, where he finally hatches out of the thing. And it's really interesting because we know there's a face in there, but in this one panel, there isn't for whatever reason. That was an interesting drawing. Yeah, so Femto flits down, confronts Guts, but then he's Casca's brought down in front of him. I guess he gestures, and she's held up by some tentacles. And then he proceeds to rape her for, I'm going to say, 20 pages?
At least. I didn't count, but it's a long time. Very
long. Sometimes she's drawn with pleasure on her face. It looks like there's certain pages where we have flashes of white light, which indicated to me that maybe she was orgasming. But at the same time, at one stage, she yells out to Guts, "Don't look."
Yeah, and she says no a couple times, too. So it's really
does say no,
vague.
But then we get the grunting, and then we get the way he draws her, and we get the white flashes again. And one of the monsters is holding Guts' head up so that he has to watch.
Yeah, so Guts has cut his forearm off to escape from that monster, but then another one pushes him down and holds him down. So, okay, several things I wanted to say here. So, first of all, the spoiler I mentioned last time was Griffith raping Casca.
Okay.
Now, then, in previous episode, we saw Griffith, in his crippled state, fall on top of Casca, and I'm wondering, did he then want to rape her or have consensual sex with her? Was that what was going on in his mind?
Yes, because she tells him in that scene too, no, as if like, stop it, Griffith, as if he's trying to rape her, even though his muscles have been cut off. Mm-hmm. We get there's a parallel scene here where Casca, later on, after all this battle, she's lost her memory, and Guts tries to like kiss her and have sex with her. She doesn't even know who he is. And she fears him and avoids him, and he's like, well, I'm going to make out with this girl. So again and again, this is what she's here for in this series. She's lost all other purpose. She's become as I mentioned in a previous episode, maybe we're reading them all in too fast succession. Because maybe if we spent more time, we would feel like, there's more of a romantic relationship between Guts and Casca than what's actually depicted on the page. But it seems like the whole conflict between Guts and Griffith is over Casca. Like they both want her as a romantic partner. All the stuff about the dreams of having a castle and being conquerors, all that stuff, and her being a warrior woman is irrelevant to who gets to have sex with her. And Griffith's jealousy as he's watching through that crack in the tent in the previous volume seems to come to a head here. Like, no, I'm going to have her. And then even after she's lost her memory, Guts is still trying to get on her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, last time I was talking about parallels between Griffith and the character Wilde in Volume 11.
Yeah.
And I think this is the other point about that, this kind of comparison of the two, that Wilde tries to rape her and Guts is able to prevent it, but in this case, Guts can't prevent it. He has to watch helplessly. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's what Miura was going for there. But
why weren't any of the other women in the Band of the Hawk raped? Why weren't any of the men raped?
Were there women besides Casca?
Oh, I assumed so. I thought there were, maybe not.
If there were, we never got really introduced to them.
No, you're right. None of them are named. That's true. Yes.
I mean, there are lots of Hawks that are never named, but
yeah, if they exist, they don't have names. But yeah, this is really going overboard. I don't think it was good storytelling. I don't think it. The idea that maybe here is that Guts' anger at Griffith is because he raped Casca in his demon form. I guess this is the thing that's going to set him off on a 40-volume adventure. It's real. Like, she's just an object for his anger. You know what I mean? Like, that's her narrative purpose, is to fuel his anger. It's such a bad storytelling cliche. Mm-hmm. Anyway, finally, it ends with a pretty amazing sequence where the eclipsed sun cracks, and then the Skeletonite flies out of it. Like, as if he shattered the moon, and it was like a two-dimensional moon. It's actually pretty cool. But then some stuff happens which I don't understand.
Oh, that's not unusual.
So he starts, the Skeletonite starts flying toward Void. He's swinging his sword above his head. We see Void is the one with the Mars Attacks exposed brain.
Right.
And suddenly this weird, it looks like an eye mask that you get on an airplane appears over the brain. But I guess it's some kind of dimensional, he's used a weird effect on there that looks like some kind of portal or something. The sword swings down and it goes into the portal, which is now turned into a perfect circle. Then we get a panel of something zooming towards the night. And then in the next page, the portal has turned into a kind of guitar shape. I don't know what, and something is poking out of it.
The sword is poking out of it. I think that it's like the Spider-Man villain, The Spot, where you stick something into one of his spots and then it comes out a different one.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Well, that is maybe, was that Ditko era? Because that seems...
No, it's much more recent.
Seems hard to portray in comics, maybe. It certainly is here. I could not tell. I stared at this panel for a long time going, why is there a ukulele coming out of Void's head?
Right. Well, yeah, this kind of void above the void. I think, on that the earlier page, it looks like it should be flat, but then it looks more like it's a spittoon shape, or like a guitar body shape above his head. Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah, maybe Void can create voids. That's why he has his name. I don't know.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But anyway, the knight chops up a bunch of demons, and Femto is able to just put out his hand and make a fist, and it smashes together a bunch of these, I guess, the demons that were cut up by the skeleton.
And then they just squash around the skeleton knight until I can't tell what's happening here either. So he makes a fist. Femto makes a fist, and then suddenly it looks like a bunch of demons squashed together. It looks like they're squashing under the knight. I don't know why Femto did this. But then next panel, we just see the ball of demons. We don't see the knight.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems like the ball is getting smaller until it's like volleyball sized.
Yeah.
And then Femto opens his hand, and then the Skeleton Knight lands. So the knight wasn't in the ball of demons, which I thought is what happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then in the next panel, the knight is riding away with Casca and Guts on his horse, which we did not see him pick up. Last time we saw him, he was just riding around, and that ball of demons formed under or around him.
Yeah, and we see a hoof landing behind Femto, and then the next thing we know, the knight's flying away with them. Which, this panel, the first time I saw it, I did not notice Casca and Guts on the horseback. Several pages later, he lands with them, like, how did they get on the horse? And I flipped back. Oh, okay.
But then you still don't know how they got on the horse, because it's not that we don't see him picking them up. Yeah. So, but then the other Godhand members, the Fingers, are like, well, maybe this was fated to happen, that those two were meant to escape. And they're having a kind of discussion about this. There's a very strange line, which is Slan says, either way, the leaping of one fish would never disturb the flow of the river, and time has again begun to flow, or the fifth angel has been born. I don't understand why it's or. It should be time has begun to flow and the fifth angel, Femto, has been born. Has time... Why is it one or the other? We know the fifth angel has been born. This is baffling.
And we know that time is flowing, too.
Frustrating, yes. Well, maybe not. Maybe time isn't flowing inside this vortex.
Maybe.
I don't know. But then the next panel says, the time of darkness descends. Wickedness, sacredness, illusion, reality, hatred, love, hostility, hope, the dead, the living, an age when every darkness shall eclipse light. But we've described lightnesses and darks. We've had wickedness and sacredness, illusion and reality, hostility, hope, hatred, love. That seems like an age of balance to me, not an age of when every darkness shall eclipse light. Or maybe they mean that hatred will eclipse love, illusion will eclipse reality.
Yeah.
I guess.
Also, a little bit earlier, she mentions that they themselves are not gods. I thought that was a little surprising too, because they're the god hand. But
it wasn't to me, because they're the god hand. They're the hand of God. They are the lieutenants of God, I think, or a god. So that wasn't too surprising to me. I think they're powerful entities, but it was clear to me the god is the underbelly of a elephant.
Right. I also wanted to mention, so back in Volume 3, when we first saw the Godhand, Femto spoke, but here he doesn't speak at all. And it does seem like all of Griffith's prison injuries are reversed or healed or something by becoming Femto.
Yeah.
But
he's like all muscular. It's like the opposite of what he was coming out of prison. Yeah.
But I was surprised that he never spoke in this scene.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a newborn. I don't know. I don't think he would come out fully conscious, like he doesn't know his place in the universe quite yet. He was still like learning while he was metamorphizing into this thing. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't notice it that much. It was kind of interesting to me. He didn't speak, that whole time when he was watching in the cave. He just rapes. Crazy. Yeah.
But, the other thing
he is conscious. He has consciousness. He's conscious enough that he wants to rape Casca and nobody else. But he doesn't speak. You're right about that.
But, I mean, you can... the priorities of the rape scene, you can see, like, practically every part of Casca's body and nothing of Femto's.
Yeah.
Except his hands.
Yeah.
Anyway... Coming up, how Guts got his weapons and the new adventures of Guts and Puck. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support.
Who's Who, the definitive podcast of the DC Universe.
Spanning from the first issue of Who's Who in 1985 all the way through the loose leaf edition.
Including all the updates, the spin-offs, custom Who's Who pages for forgotten characters, and tons of in-depth character spotlights.
Entries span from the golden age of DC
and into the extreme 1990s.
Covering characters such as Superman by Kurt Swan and John Byrne.
The Justice League by Kevin Maguire.
Batman by Dick Giordano.
The New Titans by Tom Grummett.
Wonder Woman by George Perez.
The Legion of Superheroes by Keith Giffen.
The Flash by Carmine Infantino.
Lobo by Simon Bisley.
The All-Star Squadron by Jerry Ordway.
Firestorm by Al Milgrom.
Aquaman by Chuck Patton.
So many entries talking about Ian Karkull.
The Forever People again, and again, and again.
And hundreds of other characters found in Who's Who, the definitive podcast of the DC Universe.
Available wherever you find podcasts and at fireandwaterpodcast.com.
Nuclear Man, Batman, Hawkman, 2D Man, and Hour Man.
Who are all these people, man?
They're all part of the DC Who's Who.
So Rickard is watching Zod reattach an arm. So apparently the skeleton cut off his arm and then flew away to...
I guess. I feel like we're missing a chapter, in some way. Yeah.
Well, maybe he could have taken some time away from the rape scene to show other things happening.
Yes. Yeah, and one of his horns as well is reforming. It's been cut off. Yeah.
And so the skeleton arrives with Casca and Guts, and he says to Rickard, "These two are not yet destined to die. There is no time. See to their wounds." And,
Rickard was supposed to play a role in this, if you remember. The fortune teller left him there.
Right, and luckily he had this elf dust, which I kind of remember him getting. I don't remember exactly where it happened, but...
I don't think we see him getting it, but I remember him talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody talking about elf dust as being this magical dust that could heal you. Yeah.
And so he's able to heal them with that. And Zod is amused that Guts survived the eclipse. And because of that, he accepts the skeleton's proposal to delay the rest of their battle. We'll do it in a later volume, he says. No.
Yeah.
And Rickard wonders if the rest of the Hawks are inside the whirlwind, and Skeleton says, "No one is left. No one."
Yeah.
So then Skeleton takes all three of them to a cave. Well, and Guts is dreaming that he's watching all the Hawks on their horses disappearing into fog, and he's yelling, "Don't go." And I thought that was really dramatic and sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the way that scene ends with the panels like getting smaller and smaller and kind of falling away.
Yes, and then we get a great full-page splash of this cave with the light beaming in and the stairs coming down, and it's a really pretty great drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little waterfall off to the side, like there's water flowing through there, some kind of stream or something. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So we find out that 4 days have passed since they arrived there, and Guts has been unconscious this whole time. Now, something that kind of confused me. So they are near where the blacksmith Godot, or I found in some versions it's spelled Godot, like it's French, Godot.
Oh, right.
And his, I guess, adoptive daughter Erica. And we saw them in a flashback that Guts had back in volume 10. Like just in the scene, like just after he and Casca had sex, he was remembering them. But we never saw them before that. Apparently he's known them since at some point in the flashback.
He knew them from when he went off to do his mountain training. When he left the Band of the Hawk, he went off and he lived in the mountains for a while and trained as a samurai warrior would, which I mentioned in those episodes.
Okay, maybe fandom.com didn't get that because fandom just mentioned volume 10.
Yeah, and he just was hanging out with random people. He met various different people, whatever.
Okay.
while he was out there. So that's where the flashback was to his time while he was training and some people that he was staying with, which turned out to be Eric.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Because he recognizes her when he wakes up here. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for sure. And it turns out that it was just a coincidence that the skeleton took them there. He didn't know about Guts' connection to them, just that
Right.
cave was the safest place because now, they're marked for sacrifice. So, when it gets dark, they're going to have demons all around them.
Yeah. And we have to see that Erica now is showering in the waterfall.
Or you mean Casca?
Casca is showering in the waterfall in her. She's got like wet clothes and everything's clinging to her butt and her breasts.
Of course.
But she doesn't remember Guts.
Yeah, it's really the trauma or whatever has kind of damaged her mind. She doesn't talk. She acts kind of like an animal. She only trusts Erica now, not Guts or Rickard.
Yeah.
Guts is so angry about this that he goes running out, even though Rickard is telling him, you're not supposed to go outside. The skeleton said, don't go out, but he goes running out and stays outside until it's night. And then, of course, a bunch of demons come.
Yeah, actually, there's an interesting scene here because he's running through nature, which is kind of an interesting contrast to all the demonic dimension that we were in recently. Like, we get lots of close-ups of these, like, forest creatures and birds and stuff. And then we get these flashbacks, which are first-person flashbacks, as if we're looking through Guts' eyes. And I don't think we've had that before. So that was handled really well, actually, so that it's clear that we're seeing what he saw in his memories, his own mind.
Yeah, he's remembering the Hawks.
Yeah.
And now, at some point, his eye has been injured.
Yeah,
and I looked
made
back
a note
through
of that too.
I looked back through the battle, and I didn't see that happen anywhere.
I
but
can't remember when it happened.
Now
you'd have to really. I don't know. You'd have to look at every panel. It's hard to read the book that way, like lingering on each panel to see what happened, who's fighting who's doing what. Yeah, I actually made a note of that too. I don't remember when he lost the eye.
And we have to flip past a lot of rape pages to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I couldn't find anything because I saw him, being held down by that demon, and he still had two eyes there.
It seemed like it, but
so I don't think we were ever shown him losing an eye. But
yeah. Yeah.
Also, I thought it was interesting. He loses an eye, but in subsequent fights, he doesn't seem to have lost any depth perception.
No. Yeah. Well, that whole fight against the demons, I was like, well, what's his stamina level? There is some Berserk fantasy happening here, if you know what I mean, like the world that Miura has built, where it's like we just assume that he has infinite stamina. Mm-hmm. Or, things like that. So I guess you kind of buy that the depth perception doesn't matter, much like he can swing that sword, the giant sword. It's just part of the fantasy of this universe.
Yeah. So, the skeleton finds him out in this field at night with the demons with glowing eyes approaching him. He says, you should take heed. From now on, this is your world, the boundary between the mortal world and that of the dead, the interstice.
Mm. So at night, these things appear, but not during the day.
Yeah.
But I do like that we've finally reached the stage that explains the world of volumes 1 to 3. As I've talked about again and again, why are there so many demons running around in that universe and not in the flashback universe? Well, it had to do with this fifth eclipse, as we learned that it's called, and this is all part of that. Now the worlds are closer together because it's happened, and also because he was marked. He was supposed to be sacrificed, but he survived through some twist of fate, being rescued by the Skeleton Knight. Now he can see these things, and he's kind of was he destined to fight them? Yeah, because otherwise they'll just eat him. But he can sense them coming because of the brand on his neck now.
Mm-hmm. And so then the skeleton tells Guts that he carried him once before. Guts has no memory of that. Mm. Yeah, and this is beginning of volume 14, where he says he didn't know that Guts had a connection to Godot and Erica.
Yes, that's right. I just want to point to a one panel on page 230 of volume 13 where Guts is pointing his sword directly at the Skeleton Knight, which is towards us, towards the reader, and the perspective is not right. It's just weird. The sword looks like a little dagger or something, the way he's drawn it. It's after he says, "Shut the hell up." He swings his sword down. Even in that panel where he swings it down, it looks too short. And the next page, he points it at the knight, and he says, "How about you save your high and mighty crap for after I've been haunted to death, Skullface?" And the sword it's usually, I'm just pointing out because Miura doesn't usually draw the perspective wrong on something like that. Yeah. Anyway.
I'm not finding it because I can't even, there doesn't even seem to be a page 230. But
okay.
anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so we're in 14 then. Oh, and the skeleton mentions that the elf dust saved him.
Oh, and we do get a drawing of elves either at that volume or this volume, and they look like Keebler elves.
Yeah. I
just want to point that out because
elves.
We get a lot of elf talk here, and none of the other elves look like Keebler elves, but these ones do. We see them in silhouette.
Yeah, because apparently elves used to live in that area where Godot and Erica live, and that has made the earth there strong.
Right.
And he also says, seldom do elves reveal themselves to humans. Maybe you have some tie to the elves, and I'm sure we're going to come back to that point, too. I mean, that's probably why Puck appears, to him and kind of sticks with him.
Yeah.
Some kind of connection. Also, I mean, Puck is the comedy relief, which it still surprises me that Miura introduced that element in the first 2.5 volumes, and then suddenly it was gone for volumes and volumes.
Yeah. I guess there was Corcus or whatever.
I mean, yeah, there were comic points during the Hawks era, but yeah, there was no elf hanging around. And then they find, somehow it's dark, but they can see it anyway. Casca is outside with evil spirits surrounding her, but they aren't harming her. And Guts runs over to her, and then she gives birth to this, small demonic fetus.
Yeah.
Guts wants to kill it, but
crazy. This is a
won't let it.
Wild bit of horror comics. I actually quite enjoyed this. The grossness of this part. Yeah.
And the baby was the reason that the spirits left her alone.
Yeah.
And the skeleton thinks that he should kill it.
A bit like Alien 3 when Ripley's pregnant with the alien queen, so the xenomorph doesn't attack her.
Yeah, Skeleton says it would be best to kill it. That's no human child. Someday it will bring woe upon you both. And Guts tries again to grab it. Casca bites his arm. And then the baby just kind of fades away. Yeah, it has grown to normal baby size, but then it just fades away.
Much again, like the alien, within minutes, this thing is growing, and it actually seems to be trying to suckle on the brand on her chest.
And so the skeleton says, "So it's your child." Does that mean it's Guts' child?
It can't be. It's Griffith's.
Yeah, I mean, if it was Guts', it wouldn't be a demon.
No.
Or they mixed together? That doesn't make any sense either. It's not how biology works.
Well, these are demons. So it's your child. This doesn't mean it has become dust. Wait a second. Oh, because of the sunlight. It disappeared in the sunlight, being a demon. Okay. But, so it's your child. Yeah, what does that mean? Oh, yeah, because we have a panel of Guts looking really upset, and then he says, so it's your... I don't know. Baffling. Maybe it's a demon child because she's branded, not because it was Griffith's seed? I don't know.
Well, that could be. Who knows? But yeah, like the other evil spirits chased by the light, it has slipped into a place nearer the world of the dead. Someday it will appear before you both again. All children yearn for their parents, as do demons in their own way.
Oh, maybe that's going to be the climax of the whole series.
Well, but then I keep thinking, Miura didn't survive to finish the series, so are there ending elements that we're just never going to know about?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't know how how they've, his assistants and whoever have been working on some subsequent chapters, but I don't know how far they got. Right. So then we're back at Godot's, and Erica is showing Rickard all the weapons that her dad has made, some of which we'll see used soon, including the huge Dragon Slayer sword.
Yeah.
Godot says he considers it a failure. He lost track of the essence of the tool.
Yeah.
And now Guts is planning to leave, and I thought his reasons for leaving were a little vague. Like, he's going to hunt down demons? Is he looking for Griffith?
Yeah, I don't remember. That's a good point.
It doesn't really say clearly. He does say something about hunting for demons, but that seems like an endless task.
Yeah.
And kind of it's whack-a-mole. If he's not going to take down the Godhand, there's not really a point. But yeah, before he leaves, this is where, she spills something hot on herself. He tears off her gown so she won't get scalded. And then, of course, he sees her boobs. Then
let's make out.
It looks like they're going to kiss, and then she pushes him away. And then this other demon comes to them, sensing Guts. And then Rickard kind of breaks out. Well, Rickard has already broken out some of these tools for Guts. There's a cannon prosthetic arm, which Guts says is groovy. Like, what the...
I have a 10-minute discussion. This is a discussion point. I have to talk about this. This is very specific. So Miura has referenced hundreds of different shows, TV shows, movies, heavy metal music, stuff from the 80s, again and again. This one was stuck in there by the translator. This is a reference to Army of Darkness, the sequel to Evil Dead 2. But in Evil Dead 2, Ash Williams has to amputate his own arm because he was possessed by a demon, and he replaces it with a chainsaw. But at the end of Evil Dead 2, spoiler, he is transported back into medieval times. And in the third movie, Army of Darkness, he replaces his chainsaw with a mechanical arm. But the thing is, when he did the chainsaw, there's a hilarious line. The movie's full of funny lines, but one of the funniest is when he makes the chainsaw arm, his response is groovy. And he repeats that in Army of Darkness when he puts the mechanical arm on, he says groovy. So the translator here has specifically chosen the word groovy to reference Army of Darkness. And I actually went and looked at the Japanese page, and the word is gotsui, which is tough, which means tough or strong, something like that. So I don't know if I haven't seen the Japanese subtitles on Evil Dead or Army of Darkness, but I wonder if he said gotsui for his hand in Army of Darkness when he built that medieval mechanical arm for himself.
Okay. So it's not a Brady Bunch reference. Okay.
No, this jumped right out at me as specifically not something Miura could have done, unless the subtitles in Japanese for those two movies say gotsui, then the translator was having a bit of cheeky fun in here. At this moment. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine Miura would approve because he's borrowed so many other things.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. He's borrowed the mechanical arm from Army of Darkness in the first place, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
And Godot gives him a sword, which he tries to use against this demon, but it breaks. And Godot's saying, I didn't build this to fight inhuman things.
Did the Skeletonite say that only Guts could see the demons or something? Because everybody in the room sees this demon.
Yeah, I don't think just Guts can see them. I don't remember if the knight said that, but in the pre-flashback, I'm sure other people saw the demons besides Guts. I mean, the Count became a demon, and his daughter could see him.
Yeah.
So when Guts gets thrown by the demon into the armory, and he finds the Dragon Slayer sword, and he says, "You held out on me, Godot. You got something much better suited to my fight." And then he just he's cut the demon in half.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Godot's blown away because he didn't think anybody could even wield that sword.
Yeah,
but
I'm a little bit disappointed that we got every bit of the origin at once, like the sword and the arm. It reminded me a bit of the Han Solo movie where everything happened in a 2-day period, where he meets Chewbacca, gets a Millennium Falcon, gets the gun, does the Kessel Run, all that legendary stuff. Because when you watch A New Hope and you meet Han Solo, you're like, boy, this guy's had like 10 years of pirate adventures out in space. Must be awesome. And then you watch a Han Solo movie, and he even says, I'll call you Chewie. That name's too hard for it. Every single thing you know about Han Solo happened in 2 days. And I was a bit bummed out that in Berserk, he got the sword and the arm on like in the same hour.
Well, I think it's...
I would have...
I mean, to keep cutting away and go to a later scene would be inefficient, I guess.
Well, I don't think cut away, but have 3 volumes later get the arm, and then 6 volumes later get the sword, or something, something like that.
Right. Well, we need 10 Han Solo movies then.
Yes. Exactly. Well, exactly.
Nobody wants that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Han Solo Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. So Guts leaves. He's not even going to say goodbye to Casca, I guess, because it's kind of, she's not up for it anyway.
They've got her in a cage. They've got her caged down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we start what's called the Conviction arc.
First time we've had a named arc.
Yeah, this first scene is still like, it's like just after the eclipse, apparently. And this group of the Holy Iron Chain Knights find the Red Lake where the Hawks were killed. This lake was prophesied.
Yeah.
But that's kind of all there is in the scene.
They do mention something about it was like the 5th eclipse, and that's a big bad sign of darkness coming over the world.
Right, I put the whole thing in my notes, actually. When the sun dies 5 times, a red lake will appear to the west of the city with a name both new and old. It is proof that the 5th angel will alight. The angel is the hawk of darkness, the master of the sinful black sheep, the king of the blind white sheep, the one who shall call down upon the world an age of darkness.
Yeah.
And then we skip ahead 2 years and the flashback is over mid-chapter.
Yes.
So I wanted to pause here. So how do we feel about the flashback? Was it worth spending 11 volumes on?
Yeah, I think, if you assume that the present day stuff is going to be like 60 volumes or something, then, 11 volumes is okay. I feel like we really needed to get the backstory of the betrayal, like Griffith's betrayal of their ambitions. And,
and it wouldn't mean anything without multiple Band of the Hawks volumes.
Yeah.
And then we also had to have, his betrayal by what's-his-face before that when he was just a kid. What was the guy's name? That would be Gambino.
Yeah, I don't remember. But that was crucial. That was really crucial. But I do think that it was undermined at the end by, it seemed to become Guts is angry about Femto raping Casca, instead of Guts being angry that Griffith betrayed the Band of the Hawk. I feel like I don't know if that was the intention of Miura, but that's what it reads like to me, because that rape scene was so long, and then Guts got more and more angry. It just felt like, well, this is the main thing that sets him off, not the betrayal, which seems to go by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, I think you would think he'd be just as angry even if Griffith didn't rape Casca, because he just had everybody killed. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That should be enough.
The whole series so far feels a little odd to me to have those two. I mean, I think it was necessary to have that post-flashback story at the beginning, because it kind of sets you up, and then you have all these questions that need to be answered by the flashback. It would be it would be less meaningful if he started with the flashback. But at the same time, it's just, I've never seen such a long flashback.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it depends on the context, because if we get 100 volumes of Berserk in the end, then 10 volumes of flashback is not actually that long. It's only, 10% of the total length, or something like that. So it might not be that long in the end. But how did volume 3, how did it end before the flashback? What was the last thing that happened?
I think it was the whole thing with Teresia, the daughter of the count, but after he's dragged away.
Did the Godhand just go away?
Yeah, well, they took the count away.
Oh,
and so then they were all gone, and then it was just Guts and Puck and Teresia.
Okay.
And so that was where it ended.
Okay.
After that was wrapped up.
Okay.
So now we're at some point past that.
Yeah.
So, and my notes here get a bit more summarizey because we're already like an hour into this. So Guts saves this girl named Jill from some skeevy guys and from a tree made of evil spirits.
The tree is really cool, actually, because there's been these sacrifices on it, and gradually over a couple of panels, you see that the warps in the tree actually look like faces, but the first time he draws it doesn't look like faces. It's an interesting effect that he goes into close-up and you get those face kind of shapes out of it. That was actually pretty well executed.
We find out that Puck has a power called Deathstrike Bloody Needle, which looks like a little puff of seed that
dandelion seeds
flying off of a flower. Yeah. But if it touches you, it causes pain.
Also, they call Puck a elf, not a fairy, which I thought he was a.
No, it was elf from the beginning.
He was elf. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And we were always kind of puzzled by that.
But the thing is, I'm puzzled. I'm especially puzzled now because we saw a silhouette of elves that look like Hebrew elves, and now we're being told that Puck is an elf. Puck doesn't look anything like those guys that were walking through the woods.
Yeah. So maybe the elves changed, or
I have a feeling that there was some generic. I didn't check, but there's some generic Japanese term for kobito or something like that for a little person that maybe was used, and then the translator had to change it into two different. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I have no idea.
Yeah, maybe they were two different words in the original.
Or maybe there was just one or something. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's tricky.
So Jill was terrified of Puck. And she says he's an elf from Misty Valley. And then off panel, it's explained to her that Puck is not from Misty Valley. But then when they go back to her village, everybody's freaked out by Puck there too. And it turns out that what they see as elves from Misty Valley have been attacking towns and eating people and livestock and crops. And so they think Puck is out to get them. Yeah, Puck says elves wouldn't do that. They go out of their way to avoid being seen by people. Then, of course, these elves do arrive, and they make Guts' sacrifice mark bleed, so he knows that they're not elves.
Right, they're some kind of demons. By the way, there's a scene here where Guts is sleeping in the barn or the old windmill. Yeah. And a demon, when he wakes up in the morning, a demon is crawling down the wall behind him, and he backfists it behind his head without looking, and it squashes. And I thought that was fun.
The elves, not elves, eat the parents of this boy Thomas, who then runs outside. And Guts smashes the bugs that are chasing him with the sword and then convinces Thomas to be used as bait to lure the bugs. And he has Thomas hanging by his shirt from the end of the sword. And the elves-ish all follow them to this barn. And Guts locks them in there and sets it on fire. But mean, that's still just a drop in the bucket. There are more of them.
By the way, there's a panel here on page 164. It's numbered 164, where Guts has this weird smile on his face. He looks like the Joker. And we've never had a drawing like this before, and we've never seen Guts seemingly enjoying these battles against demons. He just seems angry and bitter about it. Very odd choice.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that panel either. It is, the Joker. That's a good way of describing it. But yeah, apparently these elves are that are masquerading as elves. They're actually they look more like insects now. We've seen closer to their true form, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen these before at some stage too.
Yeah, well, there's this leader who looks kind of like a moth.
Yeah.
Like moth wings. But that's where this volume ends, except that there's a prototype of Berserk in the back done by Miura as a college student in 1988. And I really liked how sharp the pen work looked in this version. Sharper than in the actual Berserk.
Yeah. Might have been harder work.
Maybe.
I'm guessing that, during his college days, he probably had time just doing this as a hobby to, spend a lot of... It doesn't look that much more finished than the actual version of Berserk, but...
No, but just somehow the lines look sharper.
Yeah. Might have had a different pen. Using different tools at the time, possibly. Yeah.
And you can see his art style has changed a little bit since then, too.
Yeah.
And the story's kind of interesting to see. Like, a few things had changed between this version and the start of it proper, published. Like, Guts says that his mom was killed in front of him.
Yeah.
That's
his reason for going on these rampages, But he's got the arm... But the brand is actually different, yeah. It's
a post-Band of the Hawk story, so and there are some kind of vague references to that. And then, of course, there's an evil lord who turns out to be a demon. Of course.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So, that's it for this volume. I don't know, we might hit pause here. It would be nice to review some other stuff.
Yeah. I kind of... This one, it lost me a bit. 13. I mean, there was some highlights, but just... I don't know. I think I've described well enough all the things that I didn't like about it that made me kind of feel like it's time for a break or to hop off the train for a while. Especially if it's just going to be kind of adventures, like, now he fights a village of elves.
Well, there's been so much set up that's coming. I'm sure he's going to come back to these bits that really move the story forward, but
I hope. There's lots of threads that need to be picked up. Absolutely.
Yeah, but how long does it take him to get to them is the question.
Yeah.
Berserk by Kentaro Miura is published by Dark Horse. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. At deconstructingcomics.com, you can connect to us on X, Facebook, or YouTube, follow the link to shop at Amazon to support the show, and find links to subscribe to the podcast. You can comment on any episode on our site or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com. And now you can also send us a voicemail. Find the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week, Patrick will join me to discuss Fiendish, the series by artist extraordinaire and friend of the show Irene Strakalski. Fiendish is a rather violent story in the fantasy genre, something I generally don't care about. But Irene's sharply rendered art with lush color work by Carlos Nicolas Zamudio draws me in. Also, I'll do a mini review of Safer Places by Kid Anderson, another book from our friends at Avery Hill. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.